I have been a voracious reader since I was a child, and I grew up on a diet of normal printed books. I spent most of my lunch money feeding my reading habit, much to the despair of my single mother, who could not understand why I perpetually looked like I was one step above anorexic. I didn't have an eating disorder, just a reading one. The point is to be clear that not only did I not grow up reading on my phone, tablet, or what have you, but have long been enamored with the printed word in its classic format. That said, I have embraced the e-readers of today, and I love them for all the advantages they offer, even if I forego some of the minor perks that printed books still enjoy. The first and most obvious is that of portability. It is clear that I can probably fit more books onto my e-reader or smartphone than I will read in years, and I can enjoy them whenever and wherever I wish. The sheer selection and ready availability of ebooks is also staggering. As anyone who has regularly visited bookstores can sympathize with, there is always the matter of the bookstore lottery. And by that I mean that no matter how extensive or specialized the store's selection, you never really know what you're going to find. If you're just out to get the latest bestseller, then you'll most certainly leave satisfied. But if you're unsure or looking for something a little less under the limelight, then a good amount of luck will probably be needed. Even if you know finding it will be easy, such as book 3 of a popular series and you just finished book 2. If it is 10 p.m. and you're at home, you may have to wait to scratch that literary itch until the next day, possibly after work or class, and still make the time to go to the bookstore to buy it. With digital, not only are all the books always available, but they are available immediately too. A couple of clicks, a few seconds downloading, and you're on to book 3. Gotta love instant gratification. Another feature that stands out is the instant dictionary lookup, and in many languages no less. Consulting a dictionary has long been a decision process that involves weighing the pros and the cons. Ideally, we would always seek out knowledge without hesitation. But let's be realistic. Looking up a word means putting down whatever you're reading to then spend time looking up the word and thus breaking clean from the reading immersion. Now, a quick tap on the word on the screen and a full dictionary definition will pop up instantly answering my query. So I never need to choose between knowledge or the reading experience. Like many, when I first really started to get into e-reading, it was on a multi-purpose tablet on which I'd installed the Amazon Kindle app. For a good 2 years, it was my main reading medium, and I didn't really appreciate the point of a dedicated e-reader. I had read comments on it being better and not tiring the eyes, but these seemed like fairly weak reasons to invest in one overall. Over time, though, I began to notice a curious change in my reading habits that was the direct result of reading on a tablet or a smartphone. I was reading less and less during the day, and almost only in the evening or at night. This wasn't related to the time I had at my disposal, so much as the technology itself. The problem is that when you use a smartphone outside under the sun, the only way it can be visible is if its brightness can compete with that of the bright sunlight. So attempting to read like this quickly becomes very unpleasant. Your eyes start to burn, and you find yourself pulling your face away to blink and clear that irritation. The consequence is the opposite of printed books. Instead of looking for a place with good light to read, you seek places or times of the day with less light to read, where you can set the brightness to minimal levels. When this realization came to me, I knew I had to try an e-reader to see if this reverted the trend. So I took the plunge. I bought a Kindle Paperwhite. And once I finally had it in my hands, the answer was a resounding yes. But allow me to show you firsthand. Here is an image of an e-reader with an ebook opened on it. The light you see is from bright sunlight directly on it. As you can see, much like traditional paper, the sunlight simply improves visibility instead of reducing it like a smartphone. I used the Kindle daily for 2 years in a relationship that can best be described as good but lacking. You see, while the Kindles and others may be very portable with their 6-inch screens, it is also very restrictive. The reason is quite simple. For reasons of economy and volume, the text in standard paperbacks is without question on the smaller side. If it were even just slightly larger, it would mean a huge increase in number of pages, resulting in a massive book, and of course, greater cost. With digital books, this isn't a factor. However, due to its reduced size, if you increase the letter size by just a little bit in the Kindle, you will find yourself changing pages every few seconds. Definitely less than ideal. Then I saw an advertisement for the Kobo Aura 1, an e-reader advertised as having high resolution and a generous 7.8-inch screen. I should point out that this model has since been superseded by the Forma 2, but everything that follows still applies. I really hesitated at coughing up over $200 for a second e-reader and worried I'd be stuck by a bad case of buyer's remorse. But after less than 2 months using it and exploring it, I could definitively say that it was hands down the best e-reading experience I had ever had. And every complaint or reservation I had with the Kindle was addressed with the Kobo. Still, allow me to explain why from a user's perspective. The Kindle 6-inch screen, and by extension all the other 6-inch e-readers, tout themselves as being of paperback size. And this is a very well-disguised half-truth. The e-reader itself may indeed be of comparable size to a standard paperback, but the screen where all the reading will take place is not. It is closer to 50% of the real estate of an actual paperback page. This is where Kobo's 7.8-inch screen promised a paradigm shift. For one thing, the actual screen is truly of paperback size. And if I bump up the font size a bit, the amount of text per line and per screen is still dense enough to really feel like normal reading. Still, the question of size also brings into play how easy or convenient it is to hold while reading it for any length of time. In terms of weight, my Kobo Aura 1 is surprisingly light, and it tips the scales at a very modest 230 grams, barely more than the Kindle. And the newer models are even lighter. By means of comparison, this is quite a bit lighter than an actual paperback of 300 pages or more. When I bought the Kobo, it was for the large screen, pure and simple. And while the other features on the list were not unattractive, they alone would never have induced me to buy it. They were just icing on the cake. However, as I soon began to really appreciate these other perks, I began to really enjoy my reading even more. The next standout feature is the warmer lighting. The reviews I had read described it as useful, fascinating, and showed it as very orange. Perhaps the purpose was to show off the extreme, but frankly, I found the images of the tangerine-colored screen pretty off-putting, and I expected I would leave it untouched. Indeed, while the tangerine color might be the extreme, you can manually control this, and suddenly, this can make the whole thing surprisingly more pleasant. I like to leave it at the midway point, where the wraith-like blue has been replaced by a slightly sunnier appearance. Another serious complaint that I had with the Kindle specifically was the way it tracked your reading progress. It was either in percentage, some estimate of the hours left, or some weird lock or location count. In fact, this has persisted for years and years, and I cannot begin to understand the thinking behind this. When reading a book, measurable page counts have always been a factor. I will be reading, decide I will need to call it quits soon, and look to see how many chapters or pages I have left. I might also at some time see how far in the book I am. However, at no time over the years have I measured this in percentages, hours left to finish, or that Kindle gibberish lock 2389. As you might have guessed, the Kobo brings the standard references displaying the pages left for a chapter or the page count in the entire book. Another one of the vaunted features is that it is waterproof. If you want to read it in your bath or next to the pool or even at the beach, go for it. And there are plenty of reviews and videos putting it to the test, and all agree that it lives up to the claims. I do not doubt that many have balked at buying a non-Kindle e-reader for this very reason alone, and I completely understand. I am perfectly willing to buy an ebook from the Kobo store, so long as I am not paying extra for the privilege. There is talk about price matching, but Kobo themselves state that it is not universal and subject to approval, so when in doubt, I just buy it from the cheapest source, which is Amazon more often than not. This also brings up the issue of accessing my not insignificant number of ebooks already purchased through Amazon, and that one might worry are locked into their ecosystem. Luckily, this isn't true. Downloading and converting Kindle ebooks to read on the Kobo is very easy once you know how, and requires using Calibre, an e-reader software Swiss Army knife, and a few plugins that remove the DRM and do the conversion. The entire process can take a couple of minutes from downloading the book to copy into the device, but it's pretty painless. I'll show you how this is done in a future video. So what about cool Kindle features, such as WordWise or Book X-Ray? I think they're great, without a doubt. But their absence wouldn't have any effect on my preference for the Kobo. And the reason is that before worrying about all those sophisticated features you can add to an e-reader, it is essential to get the most fundamental part right, the reading experience. And it is precisely here that the Kobo shines brighter than its rivals. All the little extras, from the larger screen, the warmer lighting, and the proper chapter page counts, really brought the joy back into e-reading. And instead of buyer's remorse, which I feared I might have for spending $200 on a second e-reader, I find myself wanting to share my pleasure and experience with others.